Thank you so much for joining us on the Dwelling Show. I'm your host, Ola Dantes. I've got the amazing Jerome Myers with us today. Hey, Jerome, how you doing?
Great. Oh, I'm so excited to be with you, man. Thanks for having me.
No, my pleasure, my absolute pleasure. I was on your podcast I don't know, maybe a few weeks or so ago. So definitely glad to have you on the show. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure you can do a way better job than I can, telling our listeners a little bit more about who you are and kind of what you've been doing and what you've been up to lately, actually.
Yeah, man. I think I characterize myself as as not a college dropout, but a corporate America dropout most recently. So back in 2016, I left corporate America after building a $20 million business for a construction company. And, after I did that, and I didn't do it by myself, right? But our team, we got the great opportunity to lay people off 2 years in a row. And it's just like, this doesn't make sense. People sacrificed their families and relationships and all kind of stuff in order for us to achieve this really crazy goal. Why are we, for the sake of more profit, laying folks off? So I left, thought I was going to go buy an apartment building, and got turned away from banks like 10 times. Like, you don't have the experience. I'm like, what do you mean? I got an MBA, I've got a PE, just built a really large business. Like, you don't have experience with this type of asset. And so I went and started fixing and flipping houses. And I was fortunate enough to have somebody show up at one of my projects and ask, hey, what's going on? And through that conversation, we got into a joint venture apartment deal. And that gave me the experience I needed to go into the apartment or multifamily investment space. And then from there, I took my talents down south, and now I buy in Greensboro, North Carolina, and been doing it full time ever since, 2016, 2017. So that's my
Wow.
game.
Yeah, a lot, man. My notepad is jam packed over here already. So yeah, let's take it all the way back. So obviously, most of our listeners are in corporate America, right? They're a 9 to 5. They're maybe interested in getting involved in real estate, either on the passive side or maybe eventually on the active side. So as you said, you consider yourself a corporate America dropout. That term might sound very appealing to some of our listeners. What are your thoughts on quitting 9 to 5, jumping into real estate? There's a two kind of schools of thought: is burn the boat, jump in, or just kind of hold on to your job before you jump, full in. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's not for the faint at heart, right? I mean, being an entrepreneur isn't easy, regardless of what you see on Instagram or any of the other social media platforms. Your income probably isn't regular at the start. You don't know what deal's going to close or when it's going to close or when the next one's going to show up. And so you've got to really work through those intricacies. I think a steady paycheck is addictive. At the end of the month, whatever's coming, 10, 2, whatever you make. And so you can plan your life around that versus maybe making 40,000 in 1 month and not making anything for 3, and then making 100 and moving back and forth. And so what I would encourage people to do is figure out what it actually costs to live, right? When I left corporate America, I had enough to cover my expenses for a year. So I had a year to actually focus on the business and not worry about, hey, how am I going to live, or how am I going to eat, or how am I going to pay for housing? The next thing was, all right, how do you prove that this concept's going to work? You might see some people doing it, but is it going to work for you? And I think people continue to ask themselves that question. Ola, I know you talk a lot about mindset. It is a different mindset when you actually only get to eat what you kill, right? I mean, you got to go out there, you got to hunt, you got to bring it back home, you got to clean it. And a lot of people aren't really set up for that piece. They don't want to get their hands dirty. They want to just sit at the table and eat. And so, if that's the case, then maybe you don't want the sales, you don't want the actual entrepreneurial experience. Maybe you're number 2 or number 3. And I think Gary Vee talks about it a lot. A lot of people are going to be much more successful as a 2, 3, or 4 in a company than being a number 1. And there's nothing wrong with that. You just have to decide what really fits in your life. There's a ton of stress that comes with being on your own, without a question.
Yeah, that's such. I just really love the way you put that. Yeah, so $20 million construction company seems like a big number. When I talk to my friends and family about what I'm doing in apartment syndication slash investing, and I throw out these numbers, and they're like, "Oh, that's such a big number." I was like, "Well, it is, but when you break it down, an elephant looks big, but if you nibble on it enough, you can break it down." So it's kind of similar thing. How did that happen? Kind of what role did you play in that growth, and over what period in terms of years did that happen?
I appreciate you digging into this one because I think it's really exciting. So I was employee number 2 in that division. I was tip of the spear, had P&L responsibilities. I was responsible for overall execution of the contract. From 2 on January 13th to about 175 on August 15th is what we did. That revenue was created. I had $0 billed when I showed up. At the end of the year, we built about 20 million. Went through another year and did it pretty much the same thing, except we did it with about half the workforce. And so, that was really aggressive. I had a bi-weekly meeting with my supervisor, quarterly visits because they were both out. All of 3 of them were out of state, and so it was my opportunity to be an entrepreneur without the pay cut. Right. I think a lot of people have the golden handcuffs, and I was one of them. I had a Nissan GTR. I had a huge house. I had all the things, right? But I wasn't actually ownership, and it showed up when I got to the end of the year. We made I think we made $6 million in profit that year on that $20 million worth of revenue, and my bonus was 30K, right? And it's like I made 6 million for you, you give me 30K, something's really wrong with that. But the only way that you actually get wealthy is through being a vice president at a Fortune 500 or 100 company, or through ownership in your own thing. I mean, and that was, for me, was the dividing line. Is like I don't own anything. I get a paycheck, and profits are always better than paychecks. It's just a matter, can you create the profit enough and frequently and at a large enough amount that you can actually live? Because most businesses fail. And so I felt like, hey, if we could do 20 million in a year, it wouldn't take much. Or I didn't need a whole lot in order to sustain myself and work in my own business, right? If I could build 20 million for somebody else, maybe I can build 2 for me and keep a little bit more of the pie.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes a ton of sense. And I think, I know for a fact, I'm kind of answering this question already for you that, the experience that you did get building that 20 million company directly transfers into buying apartments, right? I mean, you mentioned P&L. When a lot of people reach out to me and say, "Hey, I want to buy apartments," I'm like, "Do you love looking at, P&Ls and balance sheets?" Because, people think it's Grant Cardone on Instagram. No, it's like boring, looking at numbers, looking at deal after deal after deal after deal. That's what this is. This is not all like shiny lifestyle. It's actually hard, grit work that many people don't actually realize, when they think about going into real estate. So, do you think some of those experiences building that business helped you when you made that transition into buying apartments?
Oh, without question. I mean, I use everything that I developed over my corporate career on a day-to-day basis, right? Whether it's data analytics that I got from Six Sigma experience. I was a contractor, right? So I understood contracts. I understand how to write them and adjust them. And I'm not an attorney, but there's a lot of business decisions within the legal ramifications. And so, how do you make the right business decisions? So getting that type of experience was extremely helpful. And then getting comfortable with the bigger numbers, right? A lot of people, if they have a $500,000 home, like that's their biggest purchase. Most people don't actually get to a home that's large in size. But when you want to go buy a $5 million project, or some people are buying $50 million projects, you got to get okay with that and get over the fact that there's a lot of zeros on the paper, and really break it down and understand the predictability of it all. And
Yeah,
so, go ahead.
no, I say absolutely, absolutely.
So, I when we think about it, and there's a lot of gurus out who tell you, hey, go big or go home, go buy a $10 million property. And I don't agree with them. I don't think your first property should be that big. I don't think, for people who didn't actually build a business or have some entrepreneurial experience, they're ready for that. And so going and doing some intermediate step, and what we teach people to do is, hey, 500,000 and 1.5, go buy one of those, get some hands-on experience, and actually get in the game. And then once you get in the game, you got something to point back to. And I think you could get a whole lot more done a whole lot quicker, and you have some quick success versus, spending 2 years getting frustrated, getting disappointed, and then potentially giving up. That success ratio for the folks who pay 25 to $50,000 for education is pretty low.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we definitely touch on education as well. But one thing I do want to touch on in terms of when you were kind of telling us about your story is flipping, right? I have my opinions on flipping. So I'm just gonna just put it out there on the table. What were your thoughts on flipping? Is it any good? Is HDTV all the hype? What are your thoughts?
No, it's certainly not HGTV. It's a full-time job. It's not actually investing. It's transaction. You're chasing transactions just like you would if you're a wholesaler or if you're a realtor and you need a transaction in order to make money. Uh, the thing that I like about multifamily investing is it combines all of the facets of real estate investing. It's wholesaling because you got to source your deals. It's flipping because you got to renovate the units. Oh, and by the way, while you're renovating units, somebody else is paying your mortgage. And then the last piece, right, is buy and hold, where you actually get some passive income, opportunity to increase the net operating income, which makes the property worth more. And in that, you're able to have a pretty big payday when you exit, or you refinance out using the Burr method in order to get your original capital back so that you can go to the next deal. And so, for me, I like complicated stuff, right? I'm a problem solver at heart, and having the multifamily integrate everything was perfect for me. Now, with that said, having all of those individuals experience, I think, make me a better investor in multifamily than had I just skipped them. But I don't think you need to do those things in order to be successful in the multifamily space.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, definitely. So now you said you went to the banks, you were turned away, right? Because they kept saying you needed experience. And then you kind of, like you said, went into flipping for a little bit. Then you met this partner, you JV'd with them, got your first apartment deal done. So I think for folks that might be listening to this that are maybe thinking of, getting the first deal done, obviously you went through the JV route and a lot of, kind of similar to what I say, find someone doing it, partner with them, help them with some part of the business, and then get your foot in the door and actually experience what it's like to run one of these things, right? And see what you like and what you don't like. So for me, my question is, how did that partnership go, right? In retrospect now, and then would you do that again in terms of going into partnership with someone on a multifamily deal? And a
Yeah.
little bit more
So I
about
part.
the and a little bit more about kind of
So
like
I
the
part.
story.
So we've got a educational program called Myers Methods, and that's all we talk about is joint venture partnerships. We like joint ventures more than syndication. We think for the person who wants to be an operator, it is the fastest and most effective way in order to get into the space. And even if you're doing syndication, you're partnering, right? Everybody in the general partnership is in a joint venture. It just sits on a limited partner structure where, they're funding a lot of the down payment. And so the first deal, it was challenging. I partnered with people that I didn't know very well. It was a total of five of us. We took down a 23 unit. We bought that for like 1.27. We had a huge renovation budget. We did roofs, siding, parking lots, landscaping, took out walls on the first floor, added a half bath and washer and dryer, granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, paint. Like we did everything. Recessed lighting, like you name it, we touched it. And it was a really good project. But in that project, I learned, hey, the bank was right. Had they given me the loan by myself, I'd be bankrupt right now because I underestimated the construction budget, right? We budgeted like $2,500 for the HVAC units and they ended up being 4,000, right? And that was, some of them were done, some of them weren't done. We had somebody come in and steal the stuff that was there and it just became really messy, right? 2,500 on a single family home isn't a big deal, but when you multiply that by 23, you end up at almost $500,000. And it's like, oh, right? And being liquid after you do your down payment and all that other stuff, it gets pretty tough for somebody at my age, and not coming from any generational wealth. So we worked through it. Everybody in the end stepped up where they were supposed to step up and why they came to the deal, but we have friction in the beginning. I was asking for things to be signed, asset management contract, general contractor contract, property management contract before we actually closed on the deal. People didn't appreciate the fact that I wanted to make sure I had paperwork in place before we proceeded too far. And there were comments like, well, we'll just close without you. Your contribution doesn't matter. We have enough that we can cover and close without you. And so you need to get with the program. And what I would tell people is, if people don't want to hear your concerns or aren't willing to do something with your concerns, then be careful about partnering, because it's only going to get worse once you're in the deal, right? It's just like when people are soliciting you to be an employee in their company. They treat you really well on the front end, and then on the back end, you actually see how they feel in their true colors. So would I do it again? Not with the same group. I really focus on getting to know people really well inherently, like, and with the predictability of knowing the person, then you can go in and do a deal successfully. You know what to expect from them, and you know where to push and pull, and where to just kind of accept it and move on. And if you can do those things, then I think you end up in a really great spot. So but you don't do this game. You have to have a team. You're not going to be successful at scaling. And we're going to 1,000 doors in Greensboro in particular. And in that, I just want to be the market maker. And so, we got a new construction project going on. It's 120 units. And in that, we've got a handful of people that are partnered on that deal. And we're just going to continue to implement that model. And the goal is, regardless of the size, is have a really tight group of folks that we work with that allow us to have repeatable success.
Congratulations on that. Definitely, that's huge. So, you know, like kind of going from the 23 unit now doing a ground up, that's obviously, kudos to you because I know exactly what it takes to kind of scale that fast and that, high actually. The other thing I was going to ask is, with that 23 unit, where is that property now? Did you guys shift that into disposition or are you still holding on to it?
Yeah, so we bought that with average rents at 695. Today we get 1195 there. We've refinanced it into permanent debt, and I think it's a mini perm for like 5 years. And then we'll probably finance it again now that when we have a year's worth of seasoning, take advantage of these super low rates and get some agency debt that's non-recourse. Right now we still sit in a recourse loan.
Interesting, fascinating. Okay, cool. So I think we're definitely dwelling into the quick round. These are going to be quick questions, quick answers. You ready, sir?
Let's do it.
All right. First question: what makes Jerome unique? What is that differentiating factor that separates you from the next guy or the next girl?
Yeah, I care too much, right? Like, that was the issue in corporate America. One of the questions was asked, like, Jerome, can you make the hard decision? You seem to care too much about people. And I'm okay with that now. It's part of the reason why I'm not in corporate America. So I
That is
can care.
Yeah, that is the unique thing about you, and that's what makes you different. So yeah, that's awesome. Second question: what was the last book that you read? I can see you've got a little bit of a library behind you. And what was the last book that you read? And what was the one thing you picked up from that book?
Sizing People Up is the last book I finished. And what I picked up from that is, you don't trust your intuition, right? It's not about how you feel or whether or not you like a person. It's whether or not you can predict what they will do. And that is what trust is based on. Do I know what the person is going to do before they do it? And if I do, then I can trust them. If I don't, then I'm in trouble, because it's a wild card and I can't predict it.
Fascinating. Yeah, I don't think I've heard of that one. Yeah, definitely add that to my list. Final question. You've got the business. I see you on LinkedIn as well. You're doing a bunch of stuff. Of course, you've got your family. I've seen a picture behind you as well. What do you do for fun?
Yeah, international travel. I like to go to foreign places and go in caves. And probably the wildest one that we've been in is in Costa Rica, where as soon as you walk in, there's a tarantula waiting for you. It's crazy.
Wow.
It's absolutely insane, but
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah, nice, nice. Definitely share that. I mean, international travel, not the cave part, but yeah, definitely share that in common for sure. Yeah. So I think you briefly mentioned in Mars method, so can you just talk a little bit more about kind of what you're doing there and a little bit more about how folks can connect with you?
Yeah, so the easiest way for people to connect with me is jeromemyers.co. So JEROMEMYERS.co. And there you can find out everything we have going on and, register to get connected with me. With Myers Methods, it's our multifamily investing platform. What happened is I just started going to some of the guru stuff and I was like, this doesn't make sense. And repeatedly I would hear, hey, I don't have a deal. I'm not making any progress. People aren't showing up for coaching calls, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, this doesn't make sense. And what I really wanted to do was create a platform that was at a fraction of the price, that told people how to get into joint ventures with their friends and family so that they could get a deal done, right? Because I don't, it doesn't make sense to me for somebody to spend 30 grand only to go try to take down Moby Dick, which is what I consider a $10 million deal or bigger, with a boat, and it looked like Captain Ahab. Like, go dolphin fishing first. I want you to go dolphin fishing. I want you to get the dolphins in the boat, eat the dolphins, then go back out after you sell some of the extras, and then go get another one. And then eventually build up to getting a Moby Dick. But you're going to try to take down Moby Dick, you look like Captain Ahab, and it just doesn't make sense, guys. It's not real. You don't have any credibility. You don't believe in yourself, and nobody around you believes in you. So let's do something to build some quick success. And then from there, we'll build up and go get something big.
Oh, that is so good. I was just laughing in the background. That is such a great analogy. I love it. I love it. Jerome, thank you so much. Really had an amazing time, chatting to you. Definitely learned a ton myself. Kind of the biggest takeaway for me was kind of like, when you talked about multifamily having the multifaceted, kind of element to it from a real estate perspective. Like, you got a wholesaling, you've got the construction piece, you've got the kind of broad piece. I mean, that I've never thought of that combination before. So I really appreciate that. Lent a ton as well. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
This is awesome, man. I appreciate you sharing your platform with me.